Barry White and the Bee Gees.
It's a good morning.
It's all about love today.
Taking us back to old school time.
We welcome in our Wingin Wednesday panelists, Carol Ross, Stafford Barnett, and Warren Cottle, back from his great trip.
I'm here.
You survived D.C. You made it out of the swamp.
I did. And I met several swamp dwellers while I was there.
You did? Okay. Did you get an interview for us?
Do what?
Did you get an interview for us if you were in the swamp and you met some dwellers?
No. I had pretty good conversations with a couple of them.
Okay, gotcha.
First one I saw, I said, "Are you Rex Tillerson?" He said, "Oh, no, but I am Rex Tillerson's designate today." So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he was he seemed like a pretty good swamp dweller. So.
Okay, so I guess we're coming full circle now. We're going to admit the swamp is there, but some people live in the swamp are up in D.C. Thanks, you guys, for coming in on this Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. I know you guys are all so full of love. I don't know how y'all could get dressed. And get up.
I was going to cook my wife breakfast in bed, but I said, look, I have priorities this morning.
Oh, Stafford.
You're in trouble.
You're in big trouble.
Dedication.
All right, so I want to talk about something that came up last week that a lot of people have still been talking about. And we'll start with you, Stafford, on this one, because it has to do with drainage. And now we finally have an idea of what the drainage priorities will be under LCG. There was a big press conference, and it seems like a lot of the initial stages of development and construction will be in the southern part of the parish where the most flooding was.
Right.
Your thoughts on the direction of the projects here?
So first off, I want to reiterate what I've said in the past. I'm thankful that the voters of Lafayette recognize the need for this. So the LUS has the ability to go on and add extra crews now because of the money that's been allocated to it. And on top of that, the $9 million one-time funding is going to go to doing some maintenance that's really been needed to be done. I could tell you the Cooley in my neighborhood is I don't think it's marked as one of the ones that's going to get done, but it needs some maintenance as well. And you know, one of the problems that LUS has had, or LCG has had, is that a lot of the homes built in areas that have been annexed over time, they built their fences along the edge of the coulee in the right-of-ways, and the government's been very hesitant to go and say, hey, you know, we have an easement here. We've got to take down your fence in order to be able to get there and do some work. Now that they've got some money, there's potential for them to be able to say, hey, look, you know, even though we've got to do this, you built on the easement, we'll get it back to the shape it was, but this one's on you. So I'm glad to see that the government's come together and is doing some work. I can tell you that my ditches have been dug, and it's had an amazing effect. Just that little thing on getting water out of my my yard. So I think LCG is doing great things. I wish that Joel would have come out with the plan a little bit faster, because it gave people an opportunity to say, what are you doing with this money? What are you doing, blah, blah. Well, reality is the crews were still out working the whole time, and they've said, hey, these are our targeted areas that we want to fix, and they've been able to go out and work on them. So we were able to successfully get some money for flooding and for flooding mitigation without raising taxes. So hats off to LCG and Joel for getting it done.
Carol, I was listening to your show, The Ross Report, weekdays at 2 right here on KPEL.
Thank you so much.
And someone called in talking about a coulee behind their house. When their kid was like 5, he could play down in the coulee and you couldn't see the top of his head. The kid is now 10, and you can almost see his whole body. They said maybe 32 inches of stuff. Let's just go ahead and call it stuff in the bottom of these coulees.
Well, what LCG is doing is fine. It's salutary. Will have a salutary effect. Where's the water going to go once they dredge out those coulees? And there are hundreds of miles of if not thousands of miles of coulees to be dredged out, and that's a good thing as far as it goes. But we need to continue to work on that regional flood plan. Mr. Dave Dixon has been he's been on the phone and he's been in the studio, and he's a retired engineer, and they've done a lot of work on this with the Planning Commission. They're all getting together to do that regional approach that we've all talked about, that is absolutely necessary. And the one thing that keeps coming up over and over again, including in an old study they found that the Corps of Engineers had done, and the one thing that keeps coming up every time you come up with these studies, it says, dredge the Vermilion River. If the water flows faster into the Vermilion, that doesn't mean anything. It's going to come right back out again because the Vermilion is so silted over. So the regional plan, that there are about 4 or 5 different major things, the Catalba and the Cypress Island Point, and all of those major drainage retention areas. But the river is a key player in this, and that's what they need to really work toward. There's another meeting this morning. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. today in St. Landry Parish at their Economic Development Office. And so that's going to be, all of this is sort of through the aegis of the Acadiana Planning Commission, and apparently that's where the funds will be directed through, and they'll be deciding on a regional basis where that money goes. FEMA is involved. That's a good thing, because we're going to need a lot more money than we have here or in the state. It's going to have to be a lot of federal money coming in. But dredging the coulees, okay, fine, but get that regional plan and kick it into gear, and don't let the Corps of Engineers stonewall like they do a lot of times.
Warren, this is something that you have talked a lot about and know a lot about. What? Are you shocked by a compliment?
Yes. I don't get those too often around here.
I really like your shirt.
You almost fell out of your chair just now. What do you think about this plan? Is it enough?
I agree with what both of these fine people just got through saying, is that, that you start working on these little places that have problems and correct those things the best you can. But the best you can still comes back to what Carol has alluded to. It's what we've said time and time again. You have to have an overall comprehensive plan to open up these major arteries that let the water flow out. And, that South Louisiana is built on sediments. Simple. The Mississippi River changed course over the years, and all you got to do is look at a map, and you can see that all of South Louisiana is part of what used to be Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Tennessee, Mississippi, whatever. And those sediments come in, and that these streams, they fill up. You got vegetation growing and all that stuff. Now, I think it was the same engineer who called me one time and said that they had appropriated money to dredge the Vermilion River. I believe he said in 1953. Mm-hmm. But it encountered so much political backlash that they weren't going to do it, and you can't do that, can't. And so anyway, it didn't happen. It's kind of like they had a big wall. There you go again. Going to build, federal government going to build a wall across, I think it was Lake Pontchartrain, as a flood barrier that was appropriated back in 1967 or something. And he said, "Oh no, we're not building that thing," So then, guess what? Whenever the floodwaters came in from Katrina, and we could have paid for that wall several times over. But anyway, you do have to have that comprehensive program and plan. And if you really want to see one in action, go up there around Kentucky, western Kentucky, West Tennessee, North Mississippi, and see what they did up there over the last 50 years when they went in, dredged out those rivers that fed into the Mississippi, and then turned around and built some retainer lakes up there. The lakes were like anywhere from 5, some of them cases over 30, 40, 50 acres or whatever to retain flood water. And it increased the agricultural productivity because it basically stopped a lot of that flooding in the bottomlands, the most productive fields they had and all that. And so, it really made a huge difference. And that I think, you've got to have that around here for the long-term effect.
All right, Stafford, then Carol will wrap up after.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said so far, but I want to separate responsibilities real quick. So LCG has to fix what's in the parish area in regards to our drainage, where the state and the Corps of Engineers and the feds have responsibility over the Vermilion. One of the things that they've done is recognize what you said about amount of water getting to the Vermilion. And so if you look at all the new developments under the UDC, they're required to have retention ponds. And then there's a parking lot actually going up behind the Infiniti dealership off of Johnson Street. And the neighborhood there seems to be pretty frustrated about it. But per the UDC, that piece of property is required to actually increase its ability to drain water over the current status. So whenever that gets done being built, it'll drain water better than it does right now.
Carol, wrap this
Well,
up.
we've had retention ponds for years. Under the old subdivision regulations, retention ponds were required. And so that's not the only solution. And the Vermilion is the big solution. And by the way, that study that Warren just referenced, 1953, they came back after that other 100-year flood in the early 90s, and they did another study in 1995. Same thing was recommended, and guess what? It hadn't been done yet, has it? So somebody has really got to put some pressure on the Corps and not let them wiggle out of this one again.
So we are on the heels of Mardi Gras, and we're going to talk about beads next. Will beads be the key? I just think this story is so dumb because maybe beads could be the answer to New Orleans drainage problems and maybe even a bead-free Mardi Gras here. People are talking about it, and we're going to talk about it next.
Linking, posting, sharing, and commenting. Get social with us.
I do like you very much.
Just click on the link at KPEL965.com.
My darling, I can't get enough of your love, babe. Girl, I don't know why. Can't get enough of your love, babe. Lord, some things I can't get used to, no matter how I try.
So, an online petition, by the way, that Barry White, this is a dedication to Miss
Long
Carol
distance,
Ross.
not so long distance. 2 inches away from you.
A little bit too close for comfort.
Keep your feet on the
Whoa.
ground and keep reaching for the stars.
So an online petition seeks to ban beads during Mardi Gras parades in New Orleans. You know, they have dealt with their own drainage issues. And what was it? Something was
46 tons, wasn't it?
93,000 pounds.
I
Yeah.
mean,
okay.
of beads that were in there.
That's 46 tons. You were right.
Don't confuse the dumb girl.
They had 12 problems. No, it was a dozen.
So basically, the people who really love Mardi Gras, the Mardi Gras purists, are already starting to oppose this ban by creating a little bit of a smaller holes that go into the drain instead
That's a
of
great idea.
you know, because right now it's just open right now. It does.
Solve one problem,
I was
create
about to
10
say
others.
it seems like it's increasing the issues. Carol, your thoughts on a bead-free Mardi Gras?
That ain't going to happen. That is simply not going to happen. Now, I don't know. Public Works does a pretty good job picking up stuff. Maybe, that's the solution. Pick it up before it gets into the drains. Would you think that might help? Have a few guys out there picking up beads before they get into the drains? Something simple like that before you change a culture and a tradition, and create other problems, in my opinion. Because what are they going to throw then? In New Orleans, I wouldn't take my chances, I'll tell you the truth.
Gosh, Warren.
I'm sure it's a big problem in New Orleans. I mean, my God, that those bees get in there. Next thing you know, they'll clog up the pumps that don't work.
Well,
Yeah, God forbid that should happen.
That'll be the next thing we'll blame it on. We couldn't get the pump started because the bees.
I was about to say,
clogged them
some
up.
of the officials would love that as an excuse.
Maybe they can block it with the chopped up statues that they've taken down. They can block the drains there, and the beads won't go in the drains.
I was trying to stay away from that because I
figured
was
you
in Lee
were.
Circle this weekend, and
P
the whole
Circle?
time, all I can think was Warren's suggestion about what we should put on top of that monument. But anyway, we won't relive that moment in Wingin' It Wednesday history.
I guess not. But
Stafford, beads-free Mardi Gras.
So the real root of the problem is that people are throwing terrible beads that nobody wants. So if they would make
Ugly
Mardi Gras,
beads are the problem.
if they would make Mardi Gras beads great again, none would end up on the ground.
That's what I say.
And we could, but seriously though, the inmate crew that comes and cleans up afterwards does a great job. But there is, somebody pointed out yesterday, there is a time lapse between the end of the parade and when they do come through, and there is a lot of trash left on the ground, and it's indicative of our nature in Lafayette. We're more willing to litter in certain areas than we are in the others. But I personally haven't seen a drain, with the exception of the pictures I saw from New Orleans, that was clogged by Mardi Gras beads. Now, somebody is suggesting biodegradable. I thought that was a great idea. But
Yeah, there's
again,
a guy developing.
I was about to say, but beads cost so much already. What would a
Right.
biodegradable bead cost?
I have no idea. I keep you keep getting these scares of of like things made in China with plastics over there, and then I see my kids shoving beads in their mouth, and I'm like, I wonder if I'm actively watching them lose IQ points as we go.
You really, honestly, sincerely, you should not let your small children. That is, we've done news
Because
stories
they
on
have-
it.
Tell them, Bernie.
It's because of the dust.
We've done news stories on it in the past. It's really not good.
Because you can
Shame
see.
on you.
Sanitize my beads from now on before I let them stick it in their
Well,
mouth.
and you know what the thing is that people bring up is if you ever see my kids love Mardi Gras beads, I always have them year round. Okay, when they go into the bathtub though, when you can see the sheen on top of the water, that is what's left over. Stafford,
No, it's nasty stuff.
yeah.
Look,
you need to
know.
clear this up in the
You
next
don't know
couple
where
months
those
because
beads
Father's
have
Day is
been.
coming up.
Wait, you got to remember this stuff. My son will stick a cupcake in the mud and then eat it afterwards.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
That's just part
Like
of living.
father, like son.
he's trying to replace his iron deficiency. I
there
guess.
it is.
He's got
There it is.
Micah.
Okay.
Blanca.
Talking about the things you throw at Mardi Gras, one of my late friends who's no longer with us worked for a television station here, and they had a new general manager who came in from all places of Pennsylvania and said they were going over the budget. And he said, I'm in his office, and he's going over my budget, and he says, $5,000 for doubloons. What is that? And he said, well, it's these little aluminum coins that we have and we throw out in Mardi. We give them away, and people throw them during the Mardi Gras parade. He said, well, why the hell don't you just throw money? He said, well, we could, but it wouldn't have our logo on it.
All right.
They just don't get it, those Yankees,
All
do
right,
they?
so the panelists I think agree a bead-free Mardi Gras is probably not going to happen. We'll have to figure something else out. Just get your pumps working.
Hilarious.
I want to say, hey, the one cool thing, the idea of bringing the flatbed truck behind every parade for people to throw back the beads they don't want is genius.
Look, Lark wants the beads.
Yeah.
Lark should.
It's a great way to collect
Should
them, too.
put a. You don't actually notice, and I don't know
Didn't
if we
they
do
it
this
again
here.
this year? Did
I
they do
didn't
it
see
again
one.
this year?
Do
They
what?
did it last year. Lark had a trailer.
Oh,
and that's
they've
what
had
you
a trailer.
did.
They've had a flatbed behind every single Mardi Gras,
didn't
and
they
I'm
do
pretty
it?
sure that all goes to Lark.
Yeah,
Good.
it does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's a goodwill cooperative thing.
I noticed this year too. Obviously, there are many more hotels right by the parade route in New Orleans, but I went in 3 different hotels, all on the up and up, family staying, and there were trash cans.
Stormy was there. No, I'm sorry.
Stormy might have been there.
Hey, now,
but
let's not
there
get
were-
into character assassination right
There
now.
were trash cans by the elevators in the lobby
That was
for
smart.
all of them because
That's
you
smart.
you get back anyone who's done Mardi Gras before is like the value of beads when you walk back into your hotel room has drastically depreciated from when you catch them at the parade route. So anyway, we're gonna take a quick break. We will be back.
That reminded me of Shannon Wilkerson's funny story of when he was growing up in New Orleans.
On
And of course,
offsides, yeah.
Yeah, they had the big tall ladders, right, that they used to sit the kids in because the kids are sympathetic and you'll throw more beads
Sure.
to the kids. He said he did that one time, and the next time they brought out that ladder, he screamed like a banshee, and they never put him up there again. He said, have you ever been up in one of those things? I was 2 or 3 years old,
Getting hit in the
to
face.
death, getting hit in the face with
And
Mardi Gras beads.
no
They
way to
hurt.
escape. Yeah,
They
All right.
hurt.
It's 7:30 on Wingin' It Wednesday.
All my girls stand in a circle and clap your hands. This is for you.
7:35 on Wingin' It Wednesday. This Valentine's Day edition.
You see me through.
The chair dancing that's happening in this room. By the way, do you guys like my decorated mic stand?
Yes.
When I came
Lovely.
in this
Lovely.
morning, Bernie was very serious doing her news. Okay, she takes that 5:30 to 6 o'clock hour very seriously.
I do.
not break the mood. She has
I'm busy.
information
Got
to
stuff
provide
going
the
on.
public. Anyway, I came in with these wrapped around my whole body, and as soon as she could take a breath, I said, "Happy Valentine's Day!" You turned me on, and then I flipped on the LED lights, and I was just like a dancing pinata.
This is what I would like to know, Rob. How did you know to get it in the same color palette as Bernie's shirt today?
telling
you. know?
Good point,
It's
good
really
point.
amazing.
All good work husbands know.
Yeah, he's my work husband.
All
yeah.
good work
Mhm.
husbands know. So, while it's begun, is that the question? 4 states and the District of Columbia are trying out a new program that would put your driver's license on your phone. Now, after a weekend of revelry in New Orleans, the thought that the only reason I needed my wallet was just for an ID, you can pay for everything with your phone. You have an insurance card on your phone. You have everything right there on your phone. Is this a good idea, Warren, as you reach for your phone at the same time as your pearls?
Look, we're going paperless as much as possible, and that I think it's a good idea. I think, that you should be able to. I think what they're saying is you can have either or both during the time being. But at some point, how many of you carry very much cash on you today? How many write paper checks today?
If you write a paper check in line in front of me at the grocery store, there's a good chance I'm giving you some ugly side eye.
I was speaking that I think I was in line here a while back and somebody wrote a check. First time I'd seen that in a long time.
It was me.
I don't even have any checkbooks. I have what few I do write is done on a computer.
Wow.
And so I think it's a common thing, and much to the chagrin of a lot of people that paper money is about
it's gonna
becoming a thing
disappear
of the
too.
past. I understand that only something like about 1 or 2% of our currency is actually paper, and the rest of it is just all electronic entries on a spreadsheet. And of course now we've got the digital currency coming out that government's trying to figure out how to.
You know what? If you look at what Bitcoin's been doing, I think it's going to figure itself out because I think people are going to eventually say, unless someone's going to take Bitcoin, that's where the value is. Anyway, Carol, what's your thoughts?
There are some places that do take those things.
Yeah. But there's no real way to get a backup on that, right? There's no Federal Reserve. There's no, of course, the Federal Reserve. That's another story. But anyway, I digress. This has the potential. Yes, I mean, there's technology's always, moving us forward. However, I do have a little problem with this. I mean, in terms of overreach, the information is out there in the ether. You want to talk about writing checks? I stood behind a guy at the airport, and they could not read his electronic ticket on his phone. Talk about delay a line and get people angry. There was something wrong with the reader, and the whole thing was screwed up. Then they had to go and print out a boarding pass for him.
And if you do crash and your phone is in a field somewhere, how are they going to ID you?
You could lose it. It gets stolen. There's a potential of overreach by the government having all your information. How much closer are we to a national ID?
I think we should just chip ourselves and be done with it.
Well,
we do it to our pets.
Yeah, right. So
I,
they
for
can
one,
find
welcome
us.
our government overlords.
I don't. I think it's creepy. I don't know.
So my thing is, it's always.
I just think you got to be careful with something like this.
Yeah.
When it's important, we all know how cell phone batteries go.
Yeah.
When you need it, it's dead.
That's
so
right.
I guess that's my thing is what happens if your phone dies, or when it dies.
Yeah,
If
so
you lose
Stafford,
it, your phone dies, whatever.
So that's like a minor technology issue, right?
Yeah.
So like the scan thing, the phone thing, both minor technology issues in that. If we improve batteries or we improve the scanner, we can kind of work our way through that. Personally, I think it's time, right? I think it's time that we start thinking about smarter ways to handle some of the more mundane tasks of society, right? And carrying an ID, I mean, for me, you get pulled over if you're getting a speeding ticket or something. They go, "Do you have your ID?" I know I have it because it stays in the same place in my wallet because I never ever ever take it out.
Touch it, yeah.
I mean, I don't have to touch my ID for anything. I would much rather have a centralized system. Amazon is now starting to put together a grocery store that you walk in, you scan your phone the way in, you fill your basket and walk out. No more checkout lines, right? So the future is now. And as far as I'm concerned, bring it in. I'll take a chip in a heartbeat, right? I would love that. I have an Apple Watch. I can pay with my Apple Watch. That's been super convenient. And I would love to see us take a step further. And because of the proliferation of smartphones, if we can find a safe way to do it, I'd love to see us be able to vote this way. I think if we gave...
that does make me nervous, too.
I think, again, I'll clarify what I said. If we can find a safe way to do it, I think one of our problems in the United States is voter engagement. We do a lot of times voting during the week. Sometimes it's not on the weekend. Sometimes people have to work. They can't find a way to get in. And I think if people could just open up an app and go, hey, boom, I'm done, and we could verify it, again, safely, I think that'd be great. So I think as technology improves, I think we should embrace it. I for one, don't care about the government having my info. It's government-issued info to begin with. It's not somebody arbitrarily giving me a Social Security number that's granted by the federal government. So it is what it is.
All right, Carol, wrap
2
this one up.
points. Number one, it should be a choice, not a mandate. It should be a choice. That's number one. Number two, there are societies that have 100% voting record, and they're all totalitarian. So be careful what you wish for.
Warren.
Well, as far as what Stafford said about voting that way, if you could, like you said, come up with a good way of doing it, where that you got facial recognition, some kind of biometrics in there, where you identify that one person, so then it would be almost impossible for that one person to vote 100 different times, like we find in a lot of the Democratic precincts around the country. So I think that, as long as we can make it safe, but then again, what Stafford's talking about then is trying to exclude people from being able to vote 2 or 3 times.
But you're right. Well, listen, if we could tie it to some way, and when I say I got caught off there with the exclusion deal, but I think it's more inclusive because it's giving people an opportunity to vote when we constantly hold elections on Tuesdays.
Well, I agree with you, but on the same hand, though, and the big thing about this that I like about it is that you're excluding people from voting more than once.
Right.
Well, and here's the other thing. If people can't take time to go vote, then I don't want them voting. If they can't take if it doesn't mean enough to them to go vote, their problem.
All right, 7:42. We're going to come back. It is officially Infrastructure Week. However, immigration seems to be what people want to talk about, and there's also problems at the White House. We're going to wrap up Wingin' It Wednesday with what's going on in D.C., 7:43.
Be prepared, because when big news breaks, it breaks here.
This latest report this morning reflects
News Talk 96.5, KPEL.
Do, da, dippity. You can get with this, or you can get with that. You can get with this, or you can get with that. You can get with this, or you can get with that. I think you get with this, so this is where it's at, where it's at, where it's at, where it's at. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
All right, coming up now on 747 on Acadiana's Morning News, the things we talk about in this room when we're on break. All right. So, next topic. All right. Well, darn it. Okay, immigration reform seems to be the big topic of discussion in D.C., another legal blow to Trump, the Trump administration's drawdown of DACA. So, how will this impasse affect candidates who are seeking re-election this year? All right, I'm going to start with Warren on this one.
How's it going to affect them?
Yes.
I think immigration reform is a pretty widely accepted idea for most Americans, and that I don't think there are very few Americans who really appreciate the fact of illegals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, the DACA deal, it's a little bit different, and it's DACA, not DACA, so let's not get confused. But, it is a little bit different because that so many of them came here, or most of these came here with their parents or whatever. So, that what the president has proposed, I think, is a very good start. I mean, it's better than what the Democrats had wanted up until he proposed it, and now they're opposed to it. And but the immigration, the whole thing needs to be totally overhauled. We have a broken system, and I do agree that we need to secure that southern border, and we do need to end chain migration. And there's a lot of things we need to do in immigration policies that does have to be overhauled because it is broken.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts.
But the problem is there's nobody in Washington I know of who's really interested in fixing it, except President Donald J. Trump.
Okay. Carol, your thoughts?
Well, so many of them have used it as a political wedge issue, and that's exactly what the Democrats are doing now. The Democrats need to learn how to say yes. The president gave them more than they wanted originally, as Warren said, 1.8 million, 2 million. The problem with the Democrats is that I think Trump outsmarted them again. He took some of the major issues off the table. As much as I despise that budget deal that they forged in the dead of night last week, as much as I despise the increase in spending, I think he wanted to get those issues off the table so he could get to the primary issue that differentiated him from every other candidate in the race, which was unfettered, illegal immigration. And that is what propelled him, because many people are feeling the effects of this. In states even like California, which is why part of the state wants to split off from the other part of the state, because they're having to pay for the effects of all of this. So I think he came up with kind of a reasonable way, but some of the Democrats realized when that budget deal was done, they started screaming, we don't have any issues anymore. We don't have any leverage anymore. And the president has given them more than they wanted with the increased numbers. He is absolutely right. They're not going to end chain migration. They need to reform it. It can't be everybody and his brother coming in, and the cousins and the uncles and the aunts. It's got to be immediate family, and that's what he said. Immediate family. The Visa lottery program is a total disaster. It's a complete disaster. No way of knowing who these people are and no real background checks, et cetera. Just, we need to even up the diversity in the country. What kind of diversity don't we have? Why do we have to even up? Why do we have to have a few more people from Sudan rather than from Somalia? This is crazy-making stuff. So it needs to be reformed. As it is, we take in plenty of legal immigrants into this country. The problem is we make it too hard for them to get on the path to citizenship legally the correct way. And number two, we've got to get that southern border secured. And let me remind everybody, when Vicente Fox was president of Mexico, he deported 143,000 people. They don't want anybody from Central America coming into their country. That's what they do. They stop them at the border and send them back.
Stafford, what do you think?
It's a lot to unpack. So Trump didn't say, hey, less from Sudan and more from Somalia. He said less
that was an illustration. That's not being literal. Let's not be literal about that.
Well, let's just.
But that's what the diversity lottery does.
Get my thoughts out, please, Carol. So he said less from S-hole countries and more Norwegians, right? So
Norwegians plus Asia is what he said.
Yeah,
well, and let's talk about what has some of the things that have made our country great, right? We don't have the number one education system on the planet, but what we have done is we have taken the best and brightest into our colleges from Asia and Egypt and Africa and every country that will send people. We've taken them. And a lot of times that's how we've been able to grow our talent pool in the United States. So immigrants are a very, very important part of society. The DACA deal has been bungled by both sides. We were trying to get a continuing resolution passed for the budget where they ended up getting it done. Nobody was talking about DACA in that process other than getting guarantees from Mitch McConnell and a couple others that it would be brought up again and that they would have open debate on it. Then President throws in DACA. There's so many mixed messages coming from the White House that the Republicans are struggling to know which way to go, and the Democrats can't really get anything done because they don't have the numbers, first of all. So back to the original question, how is it going to affect elections? Well, we're starting to see a lot of special elections go blue, right? We've seen there was one recently in Wisconsin where a Democrat won. And that's the big concern for Republicans is they're no longer seen as deficit hawks or budget hawks. They're now are spending more money and borrowing more money than the Obama administration ever did. The tax cuts have added trillions of dollars of debt to the budget. The new spending resolution has increased spending. And so I don't know how you send that solid message back to your constituency saying that you're there to quote unquote drain the swamp or reduce spending or get a budget or balance a budget when every action that's being taken is counterintuitive to that. The other thing that was promised was that no money they never touch Medicare or Medicaid, and now we're seeing that that's on the list to get cut. So I think the midterms are going to be very, very interesting for the Democrats.
Carol, your thoughts too?
Let's not confuse the Visa lottery program with the student visa program. Totally different things. And in case you hadn't heard, we're collecting record amounts of money thanks to that tax cut. Yay!
Well, I don't know if people had thoughts on that.
Well, and they never are able to do dynamic scoring, which is why every time tax cuts have been proposed and put in, everybody screams about it's going to add to the deficit. Under Kennedy, it fueled great things. Under Reagan, it fueled even greater things. I mean, up to 7% GDP in one of his years, his second year he was in office. And I think under Trump, every time tax cuts are tried, they work.
Okay, let's go to the phones real quick. This person has been patient. All right, you're on the air on Wingin' It Wednesday. What do you think? Okay, all right. Apparently they don't.
It happens.
Sorry, person.
It happens.
It could have been user error. All right, you're up. Go ahead, please.
He's wrong on so many issues, but let's just tackle tax cuts adding to the deficit, which adding to the government deficits, apparently. But we have tons of more money coming in, industry growing. But let me point out something about that tax cut. That put more money back in my pocket. It put crumbs that I can really use. So when you're saying that it adds to the deficit, what you're saying is the government is having to do without, and the citizen actually has more money. So you can word it however you want. It creates a deficit, but it means more money for the citizens of the United States, who the United States is. That's us. And it means less money for the government.
Well, Colin, you're bringing up
how you want. That's what it means.
He's bringing up a great point. When you have a society and an economy based on consumer spending, about 2/3 based on consumer spending, you put more money in the consumer's pocket and wallet and hands. That money's going to get circulated, and it's going to pump up the economy, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, so back to what the caller's saying, it's half a dozen, 1/6 of the other. I agree with what he's saying, that the money is going back to the people who pay it. But let's keep in mind here, forecasts and budgets are written off of what's happening today. And so we've been spending more than we've been taking in now for quite some time. And that is reflected in the amount of bonds that we are issuing this year, to the tune of about $1 trillion. Last year, that was about $400 billion. And so we've said these things, and the great thing is that every time Trump does something, there's a tweet about him saying that we shouldn't do that. And he said, if I ran a $400 billion deficit, I shouldn't be president. Well, now he's running a $1 trillion deficit. So the fact is, the numbers are there. You can call it whatever you want. And I agree. Look, I got a small raise too, right? But the majority of the money is not going to the middle class with this. The majority of the money, well, let me rephrase that. The big checks are going to the people who really wanted to push this through. The Koch brothers are arguably getting $26 million a week, right? And these are the guys who are financing these tax cuts.
Okay, real quick, Warren, go ahead.
The Koch brothers. How do we get to the Koch brothers?
There's a good something got sent to me the other day about the top 1% and the money that they're getting out of government. Warren Buffett last year got over $1 billion in government subsidies for one thing or another. And all the big corporations get huge amounts of money. But on the other hand, you have got to sit there and address government spending. The deficit has been running we've been spending about 30% more than we've been taking in now for about 70 years. And it just keeps snowballing. It's growing exponentially, and somewhere along the way, it has got to stop.
All right, guys, real quick.
And you know what Ralph Waldo Emerson said? A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. A great person does not have to think consistently.
Okay, well, all right. So that's going to sum it up for Wingin' It Wednesday.
Self-reliance, Ralph. Self-reliance. That is the name of it, self-reliance. And also read the essay by Frederick Douglass in this Black History Month. Self-made men. Awesome.